box creatively to get families to tap into their hard-earned EITC dollars. And so she generously accommodated her schedule to be here with us today, but is going to have to run back to caucus. And so with that, please welcome Senator Carol.
And welcome everyone as you're lunching, quietly lunching your lunch, and I hope you're enjoying it. I too want to welcome you to the New America Seminar on the power of the Earned Income Tax Credit. And as chair of the Senate Committee on Human Services, I know the challenges working families are facing today as safety net programs are being cut back and middle-class families are sinking into poverty and homelessness. It's really a very startling problem we are having together. And, you know, this EITC is a program that we all can support all the time. And in fact, yesterday, I did my little public service announcements in 5 languages, and I hope that it'll be running in my district soon. So it is really important that all of us here spend our energies together to think of creative ways to get the word out, because one of my goals is to reduce the number of unclaimed EITCs by 50% by 2013, and that means we need 400,000 more Californians to apply. That is a huge number and a huge challenge, and I want every one of you to help with that challenge to make sure that people who are qualified get this rebate back, or this credit back. So we have come up with a group of strategies, and you can always, I guess, contact my office. I can do that by email. And I don't, there's Susie, I believe, and Robert. Robert over there was from my office. We have put up some marketing strategies to help people understand what we need to do to raise the awareness. And we were just talking earlier about how we could better partner perhaps with the state agency to, you know, kind of close the circle. It's just not about saying things, trying to publicize the program, but it's really trying to do the process for some folks that maybe that we can, you know, kind of close that link and do a better job about getting these 400,000 people to apply for this credit. So I just want to thank all of you for coming today to learn about how we can better work together to help working families all receive this tax credit that they all deserve. So thanks very much, and have a fabulous discussion.
It's a reminder that when it comes to the EITC, Republicans and Democrats should join together and loudly echo what President Reagan called the, what was it? It's not going to be verbatim, but he said it was the best pro-family, pro-job creation measure to come out of Congress, and which is why I wanted to come here today, because I think that as Republicans and Democrats across the street are struggling with how to balance our budget and how to get families back to work, you have this credit that is being underutilized. And that we know is a powerful economic stimulus that will help put people back to work and help to generate our sluggish economy. And so, with that, I want to see a show of hands of how many of you who are learning about the earned income tax credit for the very first time. Okay, good. So, by way of background, the EITC is a 36-year-old tax credit. It's a refundable federal tax credit that is recognized as a powerful anti-poverty tool. It's estimated that it lifts about 6 million American families, including 3 million children, out of poverty each year by rewarding hard work and initiative. And this tax season, a family of 3 that earns less than $50,000 is eligible. And the maximum credit is over $5,000. Get this, it's retroactive, meaning that a family can claim it up to 3 years back, and that very same family I mentioned could very well go home with over $10,000 all in one fell swoop. But sadly, according to the IRS, it's estimated that 25% of eligible Californians are failing to claim their credit, and that's well over the national average get out of debt while simultaneously stimulating the state economy with an annual infusion of billions of dollars. With us today, I'm excited to say, is economist Dr. Antonio Ábalos, who's an associate professor at Fresno State University, who's going to discuss how and why the EITC stimulates our state's economy, puts people back to work by highlighting findings in our report left on the table. And Sean Casey, who's the executive director of First Time Contra Costa and the chair of the Family Economic Security Partnership, will share how working together, legislators and community-based organizations throughout the state have the power to put $1.2 billion in the pockets of an estimated 800,000 Californians who are failing to claim their EITC. And for the rest of us, generate $1.4 billion in tax revenue with the potential to create thousands of jobs. Now today is February 15th, which means we're exactly 2 months away from tax day. We have plenty to discuss and a lot of work ahead of us. So let's get started. I'm not going to go through all of their bios, but they're in your packets, all detailed, as well as a full copy of our report. So with that, Dr. Ábalos will present the papers first. Then we'll allow Sean Casey to discuss the great work that was going on in Contra Costa as a state model for us to replicate, followed by Lori. We're going to save questions for the very end. So let's begin. Dr. Ábalos.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, New American Foundation. Thank you, State of California. Good afternoon, everybody. After a few bites, you're a little more friendly now. That's great. I don't plan to talk more than 10, 15 minutes, and I want to focus my remarks on explaining how is this multiplier process taking place, meaning how we see in economics, in science, this multiplier putting people back to work. I don't want to spend too much time on explaining the EITC program. The only reason I want to mention this, or to show this PowerPoint slide, is that I understand a week ago the TPIC, one of my colleagues at the TPIC, presented some remarks on the comparing two different programs to accelerate job creation in California. And the only reason I mention this is because he was referring to a state-funded EITC, which is different from the federal EITC credit program that I'm talking about here. A state-funded EITC would produce some cost for us, but this EITC at the federal level doesn't, because we don't pay those dollars. We just need to bring them back. Anyway, can you move on to the next, please? This new injection of money that EITC money represents a very powerful force in terms of ripple effects, multiplier effects. So let me try to explain this with a very simplistic exercise that in a way is similar to the, for some very mysterious way that the money multiplies itself. But this is something similar, but there's nothing mysterious about it. In fact, it's quite logical. This example is taken out of the left of the table report, and I'm talking about a person by the name of Linda. Linda is a single mother, 3, living in Los Angeles County. She's making $16,000 a year. No significant investment income, and therefore she's eligible for an EITC payment of around $5,600. So what is Linda going to do with this money? Well, she may save a few dollars. In this case, I'm assuming 10%. And she's going to spend the rest, $5,000 or more, on school clothes and supplies at Max stores in San Bernardino. So she's getting the money from Washington, D.C., straight to her account, saving 10% and spending 9% on clothes and other supplies for the summer. Then, for Max, these new $5,000 are income that, of course, represents some tax payments for the state and so forth. And, well, he probably is going to save some money. In this example, he's going to pay $4,000 in a down payment for a new car at Nails, and that in turn is going to spend $3,000 on a new stereo, and so on and so forth. The point is that in order to provide, would you go to the next slide, please? In order to provide for these goods and services, all these businesses need to hire people to produce clothes, to produce exteriors, to provide these services. So the initial EITC payment of $5,500 produces an actual amount of $14,040 after all these ripple effects and the leakages. That's the money that you save, which means doesn't enter into the income stream, is taken out of the equation. But again, the important idea here is that in order to provide all these services and to produce these goods, all these companies, typically small businesses, need to hire people. And the same way you have this multiplier effect in sales, you also have a multiplier effect in job creation. Now, unfortunately, you go to the next, please. Unfortunately, not all these economic benefits are materialized, because a significant amount of money is left on the table. Remember, these are millions, billions of dollars that we already paid, and we just need to pay them back. But for many reasons, we don't do that. And I could just give you a list. I think we have discussed many times. Sometimes taxpayers basically have no idea that this credit exists. Some of them face language or cultural barriers. Just to give you an anecdote, I have some friends from Uruguay, and I was telling them about this, and they said, "What are you talking about, Antonio? It's a credit. You need to pay it back later." So even the name income tax credit, it's a service number, because it confuses people, and they believe that this is not going to be free in the sense that you're going to pay for it. They think they need to pay it back. Next, please. So just to give you an idea of the amount of money that we're talking about, and perhaps many of you have seen this left on the table report. In 2006, actually maybe we skip to 2009, the 2009 numbers, California residents claimed close to $5 billion in EITC dollars. We're talking about a significant amount of cash here. And this produced $5.5 billion in sales, $1.3 billion in wages, and close to 33,000 jobs in the California economy. But if you look at the, skip that, yes. If you look at the foregone economic impact, you can go to the next, I can go back to this one. Oh, one back, please, Molly. One more. Here. This is the number that Senator Liu was talking about. In 2009, we estimated around 800,000 Californians failed to claim the EITC. So the goal is to reduce the number by 50% to 400,000 in 2013. It's a pretty challenging thing to do, but if we all pull together, I'm sure we can do it even better than that. Why is this important? Well, because if we could bring all these monies back, $1.2 billion, we could produce an additional $1.4 billion in sales, this amount of money in wages, and close to 8,200 jobs in the economy. This is the key word right now, and we are all trying to find ways to produce these employment opportunities for many people in California. This is a very effective way to do it, and it's not free because we need to, spend some time and resources. But again, this is money that we will pay. Would you go to the next? Next, please. Now, I was asked to show that with the data that the IRS releases every year, it's possible to concentrate the analysis in very specific areas. So the example I have here is a single county, Contra Costa County, which Sean is going to talk about this perhaps later, where you can see that you can actually calculate the amount of money that is left on the table by zip code. Now this is extremely important for perhaps some of you here, because it's my understanding that sometimes it's not very easy to channel resources to the right areas. But if you are able to identify, to precisely pinpoint where in the county by zip code, would you go to the next, please? And to the next. Here, or even by zip, because I don't want to bore you with this huge amount of numbers. The only intention is to show you that we can do this by zip code and by zip. That way you can actually focus your efforts, your resources, and be more effective in bringing these dollars back. So the example here, can you go back one, please? The example of Contra Costa County is an interesting one because, as you can see in 2009, just in this county, residents claim close to $90 million. Now, when we're talking about county level numbers, 90 million is a significant amount. And this produced close to 500 jobs, which again at the county level is pretty significant because, well, many of these people represent 2 or 3 or perhaps more since they are the household income earner. So we're talking about way more people than that. Could you go to the next, please? Yes. But again, we can calculate by county or by zip code that a lot of people is not claiming the money that they should. So, Olivia already mentioned that this is retroactive. So, if you think about this multiplied by 2 or 3 years that has been left on the table, this could actually escalate, very quickly to much interesting bigger numbers. Can you go to the next, please? Again, you can do this by city, by zip code. Next, please. Well, as you can see on this pretty close to the last PowerPoint here, if these EITC payments have been claimed, they would contribute nearly to $21 million in output, and in this case, almost 100 jobs in the county. So, the only reason I want to mention this by zip code, by cities, again, so that you understand that we now have the capability, we have the ability to use a magnifying glass and figure out where exactly is these people, so that we can channel these resources, tell them what to do, help them, assist them, and then this way we can bring these monies in the back. Could you go to the next, please? Next. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back. Now, as you can imagine, the recession that we are trying to get out of right now produced a very significant impact in terms of poverty because of significant reductions in incomes. So the numbers I'm presenting here, we estimate, my colleague Sean Ali and I, we estimate that actually are probably going to be higher by 10, 15, perhaps 20% in 2010, perhaps 29 and 2010, simply because there are a lot more people with smaller incomes. So we believe that these are very conservative estimates, and we need these on purpose because we don't want to be criticized by inflating the numbers, trying to put numbers that they are not there. These are very, very conservative estimates. In fact, like I said, they are likely to be bigger on the range of 10 to 15%. Will you move on to the last one? And the very last point I want to mention here is the huge importance of free tax assistance. Think about this. When many of us file our 1040s, or some of us even file for EITC, we typically pay to a tax prepayer that is not free. So a large percentage of the amount that we could keep in our pockets and spend later is being paid to this person. So if we have a lot more people helping EITC filers for free, they are going to be able to keep more money in their pockets, and of course this is going to magnify, not minimize, the ripple effects. So this is why these programs are so extremely important in terms of magnifying the power of the EITC to create jobs. You perhaps have some questions. I'm going to leave that for the end. So I'm going to leave it to Sean now. Take it on.
Bring this microphone. Can we turn off the projector? We're going to bring the microphone on over, and Antonio, scoosh a little closer to me. We want this to be a very casual conversation and welcome questions. Sean Casey with Contra Costa, they took this report and just creatively kind of used it in their county to create new partnerships and draw down the EITC. And so with that, Sean, please share your experiences with us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be in Sacramento talking about something that isn't associated with the budget. And now we'll have to go back and start all over again. I'm Sean Casey. I'm the Executive Director of First Five Contra Costa. And I'm also the chair of the Contra Costa Family Economic Security Partnership. This is a group of over 20 local organizations that have been working together since 2003 on expanding a county-wide system of sites to do free tax preparation for folks who are eligible for the EITC. And we have raised, I have the numbers here. Over that time, we've brought in over $17 million in total returns, and including about $6 million in EITC. We've always known that what we did wasn't nearly getting where we wanted to be. We never quite knew how big where we wanted to be was, but we have always sold that program, this program, particularly as an asset building endeavor. In fact, we started our coalition particularly to develop asset building strategies in Contra Costa. We still believe in that. We felt that EITC was the floor for that program, that this kind of no-brainer program that basically just you help people do their taxes and then suddenly they get a couple $1,000s in their pocket, didn't seem like, brain surgery. It just seemed like, okay, we got to just set it up and get people access to this service. I want to really emphasize the cost avoidance aspect of this when people are having their returns done commercially. It is not only the avoidance of the cost of the return, but it's really the avoidance of the hard sell for rapid anticipation loans at very high interest rates. That is also one of the other things that really feeds on low-income folks as well. And so avoiding those two things and giving people money really is a big total boost. So we started that as an asset development thing. The EITC has long been considered the federal government's most effective anti-poverty program. And it's not the only one, but it is the most effective. And for me, as a child development person, there's a very strong connection between family income and especially economic stability and security and children's reading, children's behavior in preschool, children's exposure to stress and trauma. So this isn't an endeavor that only local folks who, economics folks need to be involved in. This is something that everyone has a stake in because it's not just about income, but it's about families. And it's about family stability. So this is how we have been framing it locally. So last year, these folks did a presentation across the street with Dr. Avalos' study, and I was happy to be in town that day, so I was able to come down, and they gave lunch too. So, as you know, that helps. And I saw this, and I thought this is exactly what we need, because our struggle locally has always been getting more partners on board, getting funders on board, getting cities on board about this thing that sounds good, but really it doesn't really work and all that kind of thing. So we quickly commissioned Dr. Avalos to do that analysis that you just saw there, that map of our county, and listing by zip code and by city, putting dollar amounts on this. And this has really changed the discussion. So we did our own forum last September, Left on the Table. Dr. Avalos was very kind to drive on over, and Maria was here, and was there, and we did basically this, what you're seeing today. We did it in Contra Costa, and as a result of that, we're really seeing a lot more buy-in locally about this thing. When you can go to a county supervisor and talk about, families and children reading and all that kind of thing, they're nodding and they like it. And then you say, and in this city that we're in right now, there's $2 million to be claimed. It's like, oh, okay. How much do you need? And so we've been able to pry loose small amounts of money locally that way in cities and at the county level to pay for the outreach and the free tax assistance that we're able to do with our communities. So that has been our strategy all along, using things like community development block grant funds. Each supervisor has little pockets of money that they're able to spend on various pet projects and things like that, and cobble together the resources to do it. So I think that is eminently doable in all counties. I think it is a worthy thing, and a number of Bay Area counties do similar things. The United Way is a big investor in this. It has a Bay Area campaign that supports what we do in very strong ways. I get concerned when we start looking at big numbers and how are we going to get to this. When Senator Liu talks about a 50% reduction in a $1.2 billion hole, we have to look at that very carefully. Our approach is sort of cobbling together local resources and building coalitions and everything, which works. Basically, I think there's about a tenfold return. So for about a $100,000 investment, year after year, we're able to pull down about $1 million in EITC, and more in total refund, but of EITC. So there's about a 10-to-1 relationship, it seems, locally in our experience, in how much can we draw down, how much do we need to do it. If we're looking statewide at hoping to claim then 600 million new EITC dollars, then it would require a statewide $60 million effort, perhaps. That's a different thing. So I think it's great to start locally and pulling people together and getting people on board with this, because that always leads to more good work in all kinds of unknown directions. But I think the other thing we need, if we're going to be serious about this on a statewide level, we're going to need a state-level commitment and some new kinds of strategies of getting to folks that are going to be much more cost-effective in the long run. Not to mention the budget, since I said we weren't talking about it, but I'm pretty sure there's not $60 million available to pay for this year or any year coming. So we're going to have to get creative, though, about the resources at the state and local levels that can be brought to bear on this, if we're really going to take an ambitious look at this, as Senator Liu has described.
That's a perfect segue to Lori, who is going to share the work that the IRS is doing to get the word out, to do outreach throughout the state. So what creative strategies is the IRS employing now, and what can we expect? And also, if you could speak to how the rules have changed, how they're going to impact eligible families this year. I read recently, and I was thrilled to see that for the first time ever, families that are on CalWORKs or are eligible for CalFresh, our state's food stamps program, will no longer have to spend down their EITC if they're eligible for the maximum credit for up to 12 months. And we, of course, at the New America Foundation, want to see families save their refund. So go ahead and share with us those rules and the work that you're all doing.
Well, it's not every day that they put IRS on the headlines and people actually show up, so I'm very proud to see that. It's not turning you all away. As Senator Liu said, wow, the friendly face of the IRS. Well, here's one. So thank you for having us here. Thank you, Carlos and Sean, for your great insights. And Olivia did a really good job in tying everything back about the EITC. And you're probably thinking, well, why does the IRS want to be here? Why do we have outreach and education when folks obviously are out there doing it? Well, guess what? I'm sure you all know we are not the trusted source. Yes, it is our program, but unfortunately, through the methods that we've tried over the last 3 or so decades, obviously we weren't getting that number down, and we realized that we needed help. And help came through the way of leveraging partnerships, such as these coalitions that have come on board, America Step Up. And it's the way that we're finding that we can impact that intake rate of the EITC. Because the message is clear, it's always the same message, but when IRS is the deliverer, somehow it just doesn't get done. So we're finding that the trusted folks giving that message is the best way to go. One of the things that we noticed recently, and we are looking at stuff that's done outside of the IRS, is that in New York City alone, they discovered and they said, no, this is a lot of money that's being left on the table. And what else can we do? How can the IRS help us now, since we've been helping them, to find these folks and really find ways to get this money off that table and into the local economies? And what New York City did was they decided, is there a way, they came to us and said, is there a way that we can find out where are these folks? And true to form, IRS does have a system where if we determine that folks should have been eligible for the EITC, could be eligible for the EITC, but failed to claim it, we actually send them notices. So I know you guys think that all those notices are about payout, but we actually do send notices that go, you know what, I think you might have missed something on your return and it's possibly going to give you some money back. Unfortunately, we have to put IRS on the outside of an envelope, and people don't, for various reasons, people were not responding to those notices. We weren't getting, the information that we wanted. So then again, we decided, we're going to do a project. We know by zip codes, we know who some of these folks are, and in California, there were 46,000 of them that we could identify that possibly missed out on the EITC. So again, we did another mailer. We actually asked partners to advertise this. Let people know. If they don't know about the EITC, they didn't claim it. Maybe they need to go back and look. And how are we going to do that? Are we going to send them to a paid preparer to do it? No. Enter in VITA, the Volunteer Income Tax or the Free Tax Preparation Program. That is another part of the puzzle that IRS has in our program. So we ask again our partners, okay, now that we've identified folks, we're helping you identify them, help us get that message out that, yes, indeed, you might be eligible. And if you get a notice from the IRS, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad news. Unfortunately, as we speak today, we did do the mailings in November of last year, but the consulting firm that we have not been able to give us hard numbers yet based on feedback on how well that project has done in California. So be looking out for that information. But what I can tell you is that's not the end of the line. That was one creative strategy that we can use. There are more strategies that we can use. And this data that Dr. Avalos had, where he was pinpointing things down to zip codes and that sort of thing, you don't necessarily have to have lots of dollars to get that. Most of our local areas have what we call a spec representative, such as myself, that does the outreach and education. And we can give you some of those statistics to run some numbers on at a local level. So if you are not yet in touch with one of the folks, such as myself, in whatever county you're covering, feel free to contact me and I can get you in contact with those folks, because we are here to help. I know most people don't think of the IRS that way, but we are. We're here to help. We're here to help you get the right message out to a lot of folks. And one of the messages that was on Dr. Alvalos' screens was the thing about people not taking advantage of the EITC because they're afraid it's going to affect their benefits, their public benefits. And so that's one message that we want to make clear to them, that it's not going to impact that, and that it really is free money that the government has set aside for you and you need to claim it. Olivia also made the point saying sometimes someone comes in and they get this $5,000 and then we find out, oh, wait a minute, I didn't file last year or the year before, because some people think, I didn't earn enough, I wasn't going to get anything back, so why? And that is the perfect example of how we see folks coming out on the VITA site with $10,000 coming their way. Because not only did they get it for the year in which they just decided to prepare a return, but they're getting it for last year and the year before. So what we're coming up against is, besides that April 15th deadline for the 2009 tax year, is those folks who might not have claimed it in 2008 or didn't claim it in 2007. After April 15th, that 2007 chance to claim those EITC dollars is gone. It's money that just will definitely stay back in the government coffers. So what is the message? Well, obviously we want you to continue year-round, not just during the filing season, year-round, spreading the word about the Earned Income Tax Credit, letting people know. And on top of that, we also have now sites, year-round VITA sites, that are offering to do these free taxes, so that we still are trying to keep the money in the pocket of those folks and not sending them to the paid preparer. The message then, the second message is, if you didn't file your 2007 return, even if they're not eligible for EITC, you might be eligible for some refund of withholdings from their paycheck. paycheck. They need to get that return in by April 15th so that they can avail themselves of any of that money that's just going to go back to the government coffers. So the way we want to do it is we want to work in partnership with you guys. Right now, I'm actually on in a planning committee with CalNEVA as one of the great resources that we have, and we're willing to come together and try to do this statewide, a coalition for not just EITC for asset, but also for asset building. And then somebody said, well, wait a minute, if we're going to talk about EITC and then the end part of it being asset building, somewhere in between, we have to talk about FIDA, free tax preparation. So that is the full circle that we're looking at, the full circle that we want all of you to be involved in. And if you want help, Sean, I'm sure, is a great resource for all of that. My office as well. We cover, Sacramento is the territory that we're called, but we cover all the way down from Bakersfield up to the Oregon border, excluding the coast. So there are 5 of these territories of IRS folks such as myself throughout the state of California that will have representatives that can actually help you with your local efforts to find ways to pull together. If there's already an existing coalition, perhaps it's just that you need to be part of them to make that coalition bigger, to get the outreach bigger. If there isn't one, maybe it's time to start thinking about forming one. We can help you to start all those things. We can get you connected with folks. And what it all comes down to, and I was talking with Senator Blue and Sean before we came on, is finding that champion. And let me tell you, when you're talking about EITC, when we're talking about folks that we're targeting for free tax preparation, those who really don't have the resources to actually even get their EITC because they can't find a way to get that tax return done. We're going to find that this is stuff that touches a lot of families, and there's going to be a champion somewhere. And if you can identify that champion, you've got part of your program set, and then you can move forward from there. But it's finding a champion, really wanting to do this, and getting in touch with the resources that we can help you with that.
Thank you, Lori. I'm just going to ask a quick question, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. Sean, when you talked about having your event in Contra Costa, what are you hoping to do differently in 2011? What were the challenges? What were the opportunities? What do you plan to do differently to have a bigger impact?
I think we really saw that we had reached a ceiling on our efforts, and that to have a bigger impact, we had to have just a broader scope. We had to have more people working with us to make this work locally. And we needed to have a compelling message to do it. One of the things I didn't mention in as much detail as I should have is that the work in the left of the table report doesn't just say how much is unclaimed, but then translates it into local economic impact. So when you see those zip codes, Dr. Avalos can give you, so there's this much in the zip code, and that translates into 20 jobs that could be created with that much more in the local economy. So having that kind of message reframed it for us as, this is all about creating jobs and supporting local economies, which is what everybody is most concerned about these days. So we really are this year working on broadening our coalition and bringing in new local champions from cities, from business, and from philanthropy to sustain these efforts in the long term.
Questions? I see several hands. Is there another microphone, or is this it?
I have a
Okay.
Okay. I'm Helen Rothdown. I used to work in the Senate, and when we were there, we did EITC outreach with VITA, and it worked what it was, and I see many legislative staff here. What we did is we did postcards that we sent out in a district. We then had one of these, I remember one at a mobile home park. And I remember arriving there at 8 o'clock with the donuts and coffee, and there was a line out the door of people waiting to get in who would respond to the postcard. The thing didn't start till 9. And we were just busy. We stayed much later, and we used the volunteers, the VITA volunteers, and did a lot of these. People love this. And you were talking about you need to get basically the mailing from the legislature is free. We used the volunteers, you know, we got the room, it was a matter of just, I know, politically incorrect donuts and coffee, but basically what it was, and the legislature came and met all of these constituents, and I would just really encourage people to do this, because we did this with legislators all over, and it was incredibly successful. People got something free, they got free tax preparation, and they got a check in the mail for a lot of money for them.
That's right, a little does go a long way. And so with that, Lori, what would you like to see state legislators, electeds do differently, partnering with the IRS to help?
Well, actually, I think Senator Liu has challenged in the floor both parts of the Senate and the Assembly to do such things, to go back to their local levels and their districts and be the champion to do that, because unfortunately we don't have enough of those folks out there, and we have actually, just in the last month, been spurred and had more contact from that. But that's what we need to do. We need to find those recognized names that can be that champion, that can have different forms of outreach. One of the things that our folks have problems with is the outreach piece, because that costs money too. And IRS, and there is on the back table, some flyers that we have, but it's the same thing. It's from the IRS, you know, is it trusted? So being able to tap into resources, folks that have long reach, and in this case, wow, if it's free, it's even better. That's what we want, but we want to have them understand our program, know that it's really there to benefit their folks, and realize the economic impact to their communities, so that it will become one of their driving forces, and you know, rather than budget, they can talk about how to bring in more money so that we can budget. So
Great.
I think I'm going to do it. The question I have is, if you do any of this outreach to the CalWorks population, describe the kinds of activities you go through the local departments of social services, and also an extension of that, what kind of outreach do you do at local one-stop job centers?
Thanks, that's all right. We're being resourceful here.
Yes, all of it. So we actually do work very closely with our local social services department, and they do actually do a Vita site in the one-stops. Every year it becomes a little bit harder because their ability to staff that is more difficult because they're cutting back, they're furloughing and all that sort of thing, so it becomes a little bit more challenging. But the one-stops have been enormously fruitful places. We've done very high volume on the Vita sites in those sites. We've also done it in our own First 5 centers, which are local child development centers, and we've had success with that as well. We also push it to all child care providers through our local resource and referral agency. Sadly, the people who take care of our youngest children are among the lowest paid workers in the state, and almost all of them, virtually by definition of their profession, are eligible for the EITC. So we're able to find those big populations. I think one of the things that's difficult, it's hard to know who isn't getting it. I think we have some ideas, but it is actually hard to know sometimes. But there are great, as you have brought up, there are great sort of components already in place that are kind of low-hanging fruit for outreach in that respect.
Would anyone want to come up to the microphone?
I'm all for coalitions, but it seems to me it's kind of a long, winding road to get to a goal that really, the here and now, this would be so important to both for California's children and for the state's economy. So it seems to me the state has a real responsibility here, and it seems to me a much more natural partner for you would be the franchise tax board, because you're talking about also the people, working parents who are not filing for the EITC are not filing for the Child Infant Care Credit, which is a refundable credit in this state. So we have a governor who's open to making government work in a good way, at least that's all it appears. You have this huge bureaucracy, this agency there, which has anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 people in it. It seems to me that you've got the counties identified. Why don't we do at least a pilot program this year and reorganize the resources of the state and people in it who are working for the franchise tax board to work with the IRS and really begin to target at least a few of these states that you've identified, counties, excuse me, that you've identified.
That's a really good suggestion. I know I can say locally in Sacramento, the Franchise Tax Board is one of the big champions of the VITA program. In fact, they have a huge internal program for their employees. And then on top of that, a lot of their volunteers volunteer on behalf of the Sacramento Coalition for Working Families. So locally, there is that hand-holding, and they do believe in the program as well. I don't know much about how they're run and what are their availabilities in terms of funding to do that. I do know that they're also cut by the furloughs and cut overtime, and they're busy just as we are this time of the year. But that's actually something very good. In fact, Senator Liu was actually suggesting a state level as well. We were just talking about this, and she was actually thinking the state controller, John Chang's office. John Chang's office also is very big in the VITA front. They are trying to do tax workshops throughout the state as well to offer this, bring this free tax services out to the people, the locals. So there is some of that concerted effort going on, but you're right, we haven't gotten that identified champion that's willing to put their name on it and say, this is what I believe in and this is how we're going to do it, and find ways to make it happen. So we're open to that if you guys want to push some ideas. Senator Liu didn't know how to contact her office, but I'm sure if you go to our webpage, you'll find contact us. And the same thing I think for this, the franchise tax board and that stuff. But that's sometimes the things that happens. The IRS can say what they want to say. Sometimes it's you guys being heard from other entities, not government, that spur bigger things for our program than anything. So feel free to raise your voices and toot your horns wherever you can.
Yeah, I just want to add, I couldn't agree more. What we do locally is highly resource intensive. We do every year 15 to 20 VITA sites. It takes 100 volunteers to do that, which means we have to recruit 200 to get 100. Lots of well-meaning people who suddenly realize that they don't want to spend every Saturday doing people's taxes. So it's a highly resource-intensive thing, and there is a limit to the scalability of it. And so I perfectly agree. We can use existing state resources in practical ways that make sense. I think we would make a big dent in it.
I would like to add just very quickly that going back to my first remark about distinguishing between the state level EITC and the federal level EITC, I don't know exactly where this is coming from, but there seem to be some people in California pushing for the state level EITC. And this is important because the federal level EITC is a fresh injection of money into the income stream. We already paid for this, we are just getting it back. State level EITC means just a recirculation of the money that is already here. So it would work more as a redistribution of income tool, not so much as an income creation or job creation tool. So if we are thinking about spending some money, we really need to make sure we spend the money right to bring additional money, not just to recirculate the dollars that we have here. I just want to point out.
Well, I appreciate that, and I also want to say how much I appreciate your comments. We are thinking creatively with the various partners, with the EITC Assets Coalition, with the Step Up California Coalition, to work with our agencies and use the existing tools and mechanisms at the state level to creatively draw down these dollars. And there are about 23 other states that have a state EITC, and they're able to creatively work with their franchise tax board. The IRS, for instance, in New York State, what they do, because they collect this information because they have a state level EITC, they're able to send families returns that are already completely filled out with an envelope that's already stamped, and it just says, this is how much money is owed to you, sign here. Within 1 year, so there are creative ways, and I appreciate that call to action. I think that we do definitely need to kind of put our heads together because there are champions out there. And it's great to see all the staffers in this room because every state legislator and at the local level, folks have the ability to make an incredible difference. So did you have a question?
About 4 years ago, Sally Weaver worked to try to get TANF, CalWORKs program, qualified for EITC because it is a work program. The problem was that no one could afford the deduction on a monthly basis. They couldn't spare a dime. I don't ever know what happened to that, but are there any projects around the country that actually are converting the work part of TANF into something that's EITC qualified?
I'm not familiar with this, but we could check with the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities and John Monchek, who's an expert, could very well let us know if there is movement at the state level. But as the LEBER effort was held up in appropriations. But what's happening right now, and I think we have to all work together to get the word out, is the fact that for the first time ever, like I mentioned earlier, the EITC dollars are not going to count against working families in the CalWORKs program, families that are eligible for the CalFresh program. I'm not sure if many of you are aware, but CalWORKs, and just recently in the food stamps program, and thank goodness that the governor saw the light of day and eliminated the asset test in the food stamps program, that in CalWORKs we still have an asset test. So families that are working to become self-sufficient and independent are not able to save over a $2,000 limit. So if this same family is eligible for the EITC maximum credit, before these new rules, a family was forced to have to spend down their EITC before redetermination, which is ludicrous and counterproductive, right? Because families don't spend their way out of poverty, they save their way out of poverty. And so now they're going to be able to keep their credits for up to 12 months. We still think that that's cumbersome because come 12 months, it's a new year, so then they apply for the EITC again, so now they get to keep it for another 12 months. It's time that we do away with that silly rule. There's no asset test in food stamps because of the health care reform. There's not going to be asset test in Medicaid. It's time that we don't have an asset test in CalWORKs, so that program absolutely works. But we will follow up with you, our office will, in terms of whether or not they're thinking creatively about making work actions paid in CalWORKs. Tim, you want to come to the microphone?
Thank you. This is excellent. I have a comment and a question. CalNEVA, thank you, Lori, for mentioning. CalNEVA has operated a cash campaign, Community Action Sharing Hope, and that federal investment of only $50,000 results in 14 community action agencies operating 45 Viva sites that brings in this year $11 million to low-income Californians. That is a significant return on investment. To reach the goals that Senator Blue has identified of another 400,000 families generating another $800 million, I think a modest investment of several $100,000 could turn that tide, and we are actively seeking those resources. What can we do to support New American Foundation and your efforts to secure those resources, support Senator Blue, build a strong coalition, and locally, if you're looking for a partner, contact your local community action agency. They're in every jurisdiction, most of them have Viva sites. So what can we do to rally together to build a coalition, and this time in California, really hit a meaningful target?
The answer to that, Tim, was in your very remarks, that it is an investment, which is why this report is so important, right? We all have known that the EITC has helped families exit poverty, that it's good for working families. But never really have understood the foregone economic impact when we fail to help families claim this EITC, that it's good for local economies, that it's good for the state economy, and that with a small investment, we can bring in huge returns. And I think reframing the EITC, reframing why it's important that all of us go out there and do the work of trying to figure out where those resources are so that we get families to tap into this is what we can do. That's what I would say. And just working with us to do exactly what I think Sean Casey was able to successfully do in Contra Costa when they had this conversation about what happens locally when we do not help families within the EITC. Is there anything you would add to that?
No, but I think your example is a good one of small investments made in exactly the right way and not just kind of a scattershot way. I think if we can really identify those places where the application of a modest sum has that kind of payoff, I think that's the best we'll be able to do in this economy and our political situation right now. But I'm optimistic that there are those things there that we can do.
From my own perspective, I believe that information is powerful. Information is power. So the more information you get, like by zip code, that's going to empower you to talk about certain issues. The other thing I would like to add is that, with all due respect, Sean, I'm not sure that the 1 to 10 relationship you describe holds all throughout the way, because I believe that, let me piggyback on my own words. I also believe that there is this knowledge multiplier. If I see that my neighbor across the street is getting $4,000 or $5,000 doing what he or she did, I'm going to ask this person. So suddenly these people are going to start communicating, learning, teaching each other. So, I don't know if this is what we're talking about, of going on the other side, or, but that's what I think. Knowledge multiplier. This could be a good goal to get this year.
Great. Crystal, do you have a question? Saw your hand up.
Our partners from the Rural California Asset Development Network, we all provide individual development account programs, and so I target their target population. Now here's what I see. In the San Joaquin Valley, there's a lack of resources, there's a lack of information, and there's tax preparers that are not certified and that are not claiming these EITC or child tax credits for families that are eligible. So not only in the San Joaquin Valley, but I'm also seeing this across the board. When I go to Gilroy, I do workshops there. When I go, I do workshops here in Woodland, in Davis. It's across the board. People go to tax preparers who do not know how to do tax preparers adequately. Okay, so they're missing out on a lot of money. So when I do the workshops, I always start with who here receives the EITC, who here knows about it, who here has done their taxes, and where have you done your taxes, and how much did you pay? Most of them do not even know about the VITA sites. So I'm always promoting the VITA sites, and I'm also, at the end of the workshop, always promote asset building. I promote the individual development account program. I always say to them, what are you going to do with your money? You're going to have 1,000 more than that coming in. What do you plan to do? Here's an idea. Why don't you capitalize on an individual development account and learn how to grow that money? But again, most of the time, vast majority of my participants, especially from the San Joaquin Valley, are not informed, do not know. Many of them, and I have had participants who come to me after the workshops in tears, and they say to me, I have been going to the same tax preparer for all of these years. According to your workshop and everything that I've learned here, I qualify. My husband qualifies. We are residents, we are legal residents, we have 3 kids, and I haven't received my tax credits at all. So what do I do? And so then we give them the tax advocate information, where to call. But this, across the board, again, it's happening. We need more information in the San Joaquin Valley. We need more representation. There are some great organizations in the San Joaquin Valley, but the San Joaquin Valley is huge, so we need more people out there providing these great services. So that's
great. That's great.
Any of you want to comment on that? I have a question. I was hoping, 2 sort of results-based questions for Laura and for Sean. If you were able to tell us about any sort of preliminary first glance results from the 46,000 mailers that went out, and if you guys are seeing anything happening with that yet, you can share. And Sean, maybe talk about, give an example of what results you got if you tried to partner with businesses or business organizations in Contra Costa.
Actually, mine will be really quick. No, we have not received any preliminary results yet. I was hoping to get some right provide you more of this. But we haven't, and honestly, I would love to share that for you guys when we get them. But in response, I really wanted to quickly respond to what Christina had said. There are pockets, and actually we have data that shows that in some counties where EITC is really big, it's being claimed, but it's being claimed by folks who are paying to have their returns prepared. In some counties, to the tune of over 70% of those EITC claimants are paying through the nose to get their free money back. So we have ways to identify and to do some of that targeted approach so that we're not just spinning our wheels and we're really concentrating where we need to be concentrating to really affect the numbers. And then again, you know, it's working with the folks that have that data. Left on the Table is a wonderful resource. I may use it. The IRS does have some data that we can share with you. So feel free, don't be afraid to call the IRS.
Right, you heard it here first. Just briefly, I'll say we do in Contra Costa have a very active local business council that actually has, believe it or not, a social responsibility sub-task force or something like that. And it is a group, because our business council has a very strong nonprofit element to it. We consider everybody a business. Some are for and some are non-profit, but they are all business people facing many of the same challenges working in Contra Costa and hiring good folks and all that kind of thing. So we have a strong group that is mixed nonprofit and for-profit folks that talk about how do we approach kind of the social and ethical needs of the county. And so we've gone to them and talked about this, and they're just all over it. They get it. And particularly, I think business can be a really, really strong source for volunteers, particularly businesses that have people with financial acumen already, and businesses who are looking for their own kind of volunteer or give back kind of program. So I think there is a lot still to be gleaned from the business community locally and statewide that hasn't been tapped. I think there's more that can be done. But this kind of information, as you say, is very powerful to them. They love data. They want data, they want bottom line stuff, and then they want to know what do we do next. It's hard to keep up sometimes.
We have time for one more question, and it's all the way in the back.
Okay, let me just piggyback real quick on what Sean was saying. When we talk about business, one of the up-and-coming partners that we're finding, because we also push the asset building, the financial literacy, financial institutions. You could have a bank on Sacramento in your local area. Banks, go to banks. They have community resource areas where they give back either volunteers, they have their own folks that have to volunteer. They have grant funding. Bank of America's been a big funder, Wells Fargo, Citibank. So use your resources, but they're in it too because they have seen the light. They've seen that connection. Free EITC dollars, where are we going to put them? We're going to put them in a bank account to keep safe. Okay?
I was wondering how you guys are going to do the schools and all, because kids are very informative when they think, you know, where they get the money. Like, Mom, have you did your... you go make a check, the money, you can get $1,000 more, give it to the kids, and do the school districts. Like have you know how to have drug day, where y'all have a test day and inform the kids, and the kids run home and tell their parents.
Have green ribbon day instead of red ribbon day.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up because the IRS actually has seen that vision. We have a program called Understanding Taxes, which was developed through teachers who actually developed a curriculum that I think pretty much is in line with state curriculum guidelines throughout the nation. But basically, it's an interactive course with all the teacher lessons and the student lessons, and it takes them exactly through that. The economic process, why file taxes, how do I do it, and it moves it around. In terms of school, yes, I have partners. Hiram Johnson High School has been doing the VITA program for 14 years. Grant High School's been doing it for 3 years. Lincoln High School's been doing it for a number of years as well. And so these are students who learn and get certified to prepare taxes, and they actually go out in the community. And it is an eye raiser when someone has said, okay, Sean's going to help you, and Sean's a 16-year-old, and they kind of go, and then we have to tell them, they're IRS certified, they know what they're doing, and we have somebody that's well reviewing it anyways, and it'll be fine. So yes, we have, but it's a slow process too, because the schools believe in it as well. unfortunately, their budgets. We have to deal with that. So thank you for that, and I'm glad you also realize the potential that's there.
We are going to be wrapping up, but before we do, we are going to be having a series of these policy conversations throughout the year, and welcome all of you to continue to attend. And we also have a webinar that's coming up next week. I'd love Maria to share the details of the webinar, and the invitation is actually in your packet. It's in your packet. And it's going to be regarding innovation that's happening at the local level. The Family Independent Initiative, Maurice Miller from Oakland has an incredible model of helping families become self-sufficient and exit poverty permanently. And so he will join our colleagues in Washington, D.C. for a fascinating conversation with folks from the White House on how they're promoting this innovative model. And so we would love for you to join us on the internet and participate in this webinar. And with that, thank you so much for joining us. If you didn't summon up the courage to ask your question or it just occurred to you just now, feel free to stick around. I think Dr. Avalos has a few minutes before he has to jump on the train and head back to Fresno. So thank you so much and have a good afternoon. Bye for now.